This episode is pre-recorded from Studio B.
Well, evidently, welcome back to It Tastes Like Burning podcast. This is Matt.
This is Jesse.
And if you ever feel like reaching out to us, shoot us an email at ittasteslikeburningcast@gmail.com. You can always find us on YouTube at It Tastes Like Burning Cast. And you can find us on Patreon at It Tastes Like Burning Cast. And don't forget to ever go to our merch store and find thongs and lighters and ashtrays and flip flops if you ever feel like supporting us.
Or none of those things, but t-shirts for sure.
Oh, there is t-shirts.
Yeah, candles. We do have scented candles.
I
Yeah.
think there's drinking devices.
There is some 1-ounce glasses. They're really nice. The print quality on the 1-ounce glass is just second to none.
Durable.
It hasn't washed off yet.
Yep.
Of course, we've never washed the glass.
Yes. I've never had a drink on the outside, so
Yeah, it's all good.
So what do we got in the oven today?
So Matt and I and my wife traveled over to, let's just call it Western Louisiana, Eastern Texas this last weekend.
Okay.
And did a little class. It's under the auspice of being a marketing class, but we had a lot more discussions than fire department marketing. And then, I follow the MBFC forum pretty tightly, right? On that every morning, kind of reading what happened. Get that email alert. If you're not a member of MVFC and you're not subscribed to the forum and getting the emails, you should, because there's randomly a lot of good information in there. And I just want to talk about kind of that we can't do it. Kind of the whole, you go into this and you think, well, that's never going to work. And turns out it really doesn't take that much to make it work, right?
I don't think so. I mean it takes time. That's like my pro tip in it. Don't expect results in 12 minutes.
But we heard crazy stories this weekend of departments that are just like, man, off the charts of not doing the right thing.
Right.
Yeah, just if the right thing is over here, they're way over there. And they're, not spending money, they're not doing kind of the things to make themselves better. And I kind of want to dive down the rabbit hole of you take in donations, you take in money. What are you supposed to do with it? Are you supposed to sit on it for perpetuity?
Guess it really depends on what the mindset of the membership is. Because I know a lot of departments that look at that as like their personal retirement and they won't let it go.
Yeah. But is it?
I would argue no.
I mean, how could it be? I mean, that's one of the craziest things, and I see it all the time, is departments that either fundraise or take donations or whatever. Hell, sometimes it's even tax dollars, right?
Mm-hmm.
And they're just stacking this money up for the rainy day. And it turns out every day's a rainy day, and they can't recognize that they actually need to spend some money and not develop this $1 million nest egg.
Yeah, I think there's a big difference between saving money for a project and hoarding money because.
Right. Yeah. Because the unknown or whatever,
Yeah.
right? So if you're if you don't have PPE and you don't have appropriate apparatus and you don't have some of these things, but you have hundreds of thousands of dollars in the bank, it would stand to reason that you take some of these dollars and convert it into the things necessary to do the job, right?
Right. So the theoretical scenario is this. You're a very small, very rural VFD You have ancient fire equipment, you have no PPE, you're effectively showing up to all calls in a brush truck, and the vast majority of your calls you're not even responding to. Your third or fourth due, and your mutual aid partners are the ones that are actually covering your calls. But you have a 40 to $80,000 a year fundraiser, and you have for the last 70 years.
Yeah. Sitting on, 750,000 in the bank, right?
Right.
Doesn't buy a new tower ladder.
Yeah, but you also have no gear. You have your newest truck's a 1980 square body Chevy. Uh, no
And
engine, no tanker, no air packs, no wall gear, no structure gear, effectively no hand tools.
no stated goal,
Yeah,
right?
you're not making calls of service like your neighbors are covering your calls. What are you doing?
Yeah, I think the the big thing is you that stated goal, right? You got to have that goal. And I think that's something that we've done pretty well at is having like the stated goal, right? And that goal is ever evolving and it gets reevaluated and we look at what the needs versus the wants and we look at what we need today to continue to provide the level of service or to enhance that level of service, right? And through that evaluation process, we come up with the things to spend that money on. And we're not our department's not shy about spending money, right?
No,
We 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 don't waste money. I would argue that we've never wasted any of it. It's all gone to a furthering the goal.
right,
And I think departments need to seriously evaluate what those goals are to get to a point to spend that money.
right. I do know this. It was a mistake of me to turn the air conditioner off.
Yeah, no, that's horrible. You should turn that back
I'm
on.
going to turn it back on.
Yeah, yeah, it instantly got hot. Studio B has like, yeah, has the worst air conditioner in the earth. But
Well, we're trying new things out ourselves.
yeah,
There's nothing wrong with saving money on the electric bill.
yeah, the old electric bill needs a little help every now and then.
Yeah, I just, don't get me wrong. I truly understand saving money for a project. I truly understand wanting to have a nest egg or some reserve operating funds. But I'm talking about when you're on the extreme side of that and you are actually going out of your way to not only save money, but not spend it. And you have huge needs that are a significant factor of consideration,
So,
and you're not addressing them.
Matt, what do you think the appropriate? So every department out there can historically look back and know what their year year to year operational costs are, right?
Right.
Pretty easy to do. You can figure this out. It doesn't take a Rhodes Scholar or a mathematician to do it. So what is an appropriate amount of time to have a reserve for?
Well, just standard business is 3 to 6 months.
I would argue
And
that a volunteer fire department might have a year of reserve.
and that was the number I was gonna say. I mean, you could say a year's a bit much. You could maybe say 8 months. Okay. Uh you could also make the argument for 9 months, three
Yeah.
quarters.
I think a year is where it tops out.
Yeah.
I don't think because you're going to fundraise or whatever beyond that year's time frame and you know that you could always do more, right? Even if you're if you're knocking it out of the park on that fundraiser, that you're doing $100,000 and a year on that one event, massive fundraiser, you could have a smaller one in there sometime 6 months down the road, and maybe it's $10,000, but that offsets, right?
Right.
So I don't think anybody should have more than a year of reserves. I don't think that's prudent for the use of the donations, the use of the money. Definitely not prudent for the use of tax dollars.
Yeah, but I mean, again, a year is a ton. Why would you have a year of operating revenue in reserves?
Yeah, and I'm saying that's the extreme. That's like the top of the mark. That's the most it should ever be.
Like
Six
your
months is probably
problems,
more realistic.
your problems are so extreme. If you used up years of operating expense and no way replacing that, then I would argue you have some gigantic, unfounded, whatever debacle, political issue going on where you've been cleaved from the herd, and that I would almost argue that maybe that's why you're having the financial troubles, because you have a year's worth of reserve and you've been cut off. Like that to me, I think that's actually pretty extreme.
So let's go down the hypothetical trail. So your department X and BFE wherever, right? And you've got an annual fundraising that's historically provided. Let's just pick $25,000 a year, and you have a $10,000 operating expense for that same year. So you're 15,000 in the positive, right? And so that 15,000 rolls into the next year, and that rolls into the next year. So you're bringing in more than you're spending automatically every year by 50%, right? At what point does it become imperative that you increase the operational cost of the organization, right? So you've got to spend more so that you have more costs, and they're reoccurring, right? So we're, instead of having two guys with PPE and one air pack, when this we're going to have two air packs now, and we'll
Right.
have two guys with PPE and air packs, and we'll now that other air pack has some cost associated with it, right? So we can figure that out, and what that kind of amortizes out for the life of that equipment pretty easy. And we can say, hey, we're gonna do all right with this, right?
Right.
It's not rocket surgery, and it's not this leap of faith either. You're not taking the leap of faith that if we build it, they will come.
Right. Yeah, I mean, I think what you're talking about's actually a really important discussion point. Um, I think it would take us a hair longer in this podcast to kind of come up with a number, but I'd feel real confident saying bare minimum 25%. And I think you're looking at like 50%. And when you're at 50%, 6 months off, like there's nothing wrong with having that discussion on being like, look, we need brush trucks, we need a new squad. I mean, I can understand not diving off into engines at that point, but
But it doesn't always have to be new.
yeah, that's the whole other thing that drives me nuts is you can get some really awesome apparatus at really decent prices.
And if
Like,
you're already pinching pennies, just pinch them the other way, right?
right,
Yeah. I think that we're so far removed from the aspect of that whole struggling financially side of the equation of volunteer fire that, which, don't take me wrong, we always need more than what we have or have means for, right? We always want more than we have means for.
Right.
But we don't hurt for anything. Like, we can fix any shortcoming that we have pretty easily. Sometimes we choose not to fix those. We choose to let it ride for a little while. And there's nothing wrong with that.
Well, and we're on the opposite side of the moon. I mean, yeah, we have good budget line items. Yeah, we have a subsidy, but our fleet, our maintenance, our operating cost, our obligations to the community still demand a pretty significant dedication to making sure that money's going into those line items. And it leaves you in a gray area where when you have positive money left over, you haven't consumed the entirety of a budget or a subsidy. Do you spend it?
Yeah.
So, a little bit of a different. When
It,
the equation completes itself, there's more work to do on the back end.
right. I just think that the propensity to hoard the cash most of the time outweighs the reasoning to actually take care of the needs.
Yeah, I think what we're kind of discussing is we're kind of blurring two lines and we're not intending to. There's a big difference between hoarding money and having a tight budget. There is a big difference of hoarding money and sitting there and saying, "Well, we can't buy that." Well, how much money have you saved over the years?
Yeah.
I mean, at the end of the day, how much risk are you putting your membership at? I mean, if you're responding to calls without PPE, you should probably address that.
Yeah.
Like, you probably need to take a whack at that one.
Yeah. 1,000% reserve is not the right answer.
No.
Yeah. Yeah. It's just not. And it struck me, it's so far out of the realm of the way I think about
Right.
how this is supposed to work that it struck me completely off guard when this was brought up in this class that we were doing. And it kind of drove the class down a rabbit hole, right? Of not necessarily what our plan was, but we veered from the plan to talk about this thing.
Yeah. Well, and we've talked about this. I think there's where the lines also blur is when you're a VFD fighting the good fight and you're putting in your hours, you know, you're taking care of your community and the budget's tight. And then your neighbor who's who's literally not putting in the hours and sacking cash and not making their call responsibilities. I think that's a really interesting discussion. You know, I think there's something to be said about truly understanding that the power in volunteer is automatic and mutual aid, and that volunteers' biggest Achilles heel is our automatic aid and mutual aid.
Right.
And when you're taking advantage, whether inadvertently or unintentionally, uh, of your neighbors covering your responsibility, but you're still collecting service funding, I think that's where you need to really have this discussion.
Yeah, because
Uh,
it does get slanted really quick, right? It happens everywhere. It's not just relegated to that East Texas bunch that we were visiting with, but It can happen in a major metropolitan area. It could happen with a career department, right? You got career
Yeah, it can
department
happen
B
very easily.
that doesn't staff appropriately, and they rely on their neighbors to run in on them and take care of their calls, but they're doing it under the premise of automatic or mutual aid, and that's a burden to the neighboring district that's not being funded by the neighboring district. So it becomes an issue, right? All that stuff will ride for a while. It the trick is to not let it come to a head.
Right. Yeah, I mean, and like I said, I mean, there's a certain point at where you're being neighborly and a good steward of your community, and you're being completely taken care of it or taken advantage of.
Right.
And I just,
And just for the record, we are not being completely taken advantage of. We're
yeah,
we're
no,
not in that boat. Like
no.
we're just these are observations from places and travels and
I think in our area, I think all the departments in our area actually deserve a lot of credit because I would say that we probably have the best neighbors. Uh, and I would argue that we do a fantastic job at taking care of our community.
our neighbors help us with that.
Yes. Yeah, no, no,
100%.
and it's cyclical and
Yeah.
reciprocal.
Yeah.
Like, no. This is many reasons why Granbury and Hood County are dirty, rotten, spoiled.
Yeah.
We are very fortunate and lucky with what we have across the board.
And the fact that we're able from a distance to watch some of these things that are unfolding in other areas and other communities will help us to identify these before they become a problem for us.
Right.
Right. And I think that's the important distinction that everybody listening needs to have is like understand that a department that's maybe struggling between some certain hours of the day or you know they've got a whole bunch of people out or sick or whatever and you have to pick up their slack for a week or two is not that can happen to you just as fast.
Yeah. Well, I mean, a month or even a quarter.
Yeah.
Okay. Now, fast forward a decade,
There's a problem.
there's been a problem.
Yeah. Yeah.
So,
I think that sometimes we get wrapped up in some of that stuff. Like we think because we ran 3 calls in somebody else's district because they couldn't get somebody out on Tuesday means that now we're somehow
superior.
overburdened or superior
Yeah.
because we had to pick up somebody's slack, but we forget about Thursday when somebody had to pick up our slack,
Right.
right? And I I think that's not fair either way to be so judgmental on something like that.
I would call it the system working as designed.
Yeah.
Like it's the purest intention of what being volunteer is. And I can only imagine the eye rolling and the shouting at that statement, but like God Almighty, just you need to really think about the level of service and how it's performed and then how your automatic and mutual aid benefits you.
And I think you can go even 2 steps deeper in that, right? So if you have a neighboring department that excels and's really good at some particular facet of what you respond to, lean on those guys for that, right? And let them shine at what they're good at. So they're good at wildland or whatever. Maybe that means you don't have to send the whole cavalry on the wildland. Maybe you hold some stuff back for the structure fire and let them go excel at the thing they're good at.
Right.
and maybe they're terrible at the structure fire or the tank battery oil field fire. It it is what it is. Like it takes a extreme level of awareness and persistence to be good at everything, right?
Right.
That I don't know that as good as we do, I don't know that we've gotten there yet, right?
No, yeah, I'd agree.
Yeah, we're pretty good at a lot of things, but we're not perfect at everything, nor will we ever be. And it just don't let the things that we are good at outshine the things that we're bad at or subpar at, or maybe just a little bit lacking. Maybe it's not subpar, maybe it's still above par, but we could be better at some of those things. I really enjoy going and doing those classes and getting to talk to those departments and try to figure out what their actual struggles are and how some of the lessons we've learned have gotten us past some of those struggles that they're currently having, and how maybe some of the things we've learned can help them get past some of those struggles.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know that it's always just taken to heart. Like sometimes they just look at us like, y'all are dumb. We could never do that. But I do see common themes, and I saw something this week on the MVFC forum, a couple of posts that were just what I consider just right down the arrow, perfect, right on point about how marketing yourself and how being forward thinking and working towards bigger goals than just going and putting the fire out helps a lot of departments. How building uh value into the members and value into the organization and working towards a lot bigger goal than going and putting out the fire, right? Going and putting out the fire is not the ultimate goal.
Yeah, I mean, this is like a huge discussion point, what you're talking about, but I just you're really hitting you're really missing the point if your objective is community service and putting out the fire. Like you you are so far out of where you need to be considering and operating. That's your job.
Yeah, no, that's what's
That's your
expected,
job. That's
right?
what you're supposed to do. That's
It's the things that fly outside of the expectation, right? It's the things that actually build the organization to a level. And understand that all of these things and doing this stuff also has consequences. It's not just rainbows and unicorns, right? There's work and effort and time and energy that goes into some of this stuff. And some of the stuff you're going to get wrong.
oh yeah. And you're gonna get it wrong really bad.
Yeah.
The kicker is what I can tell you is if you're open, upfront, and honest with your membership, they're gonna be okay with you being wrong. There's nothing wrong with being wrong.
I
If
thought I was wrong once, but I was mistaken.
it's just, and what we're talking about is part of the answer. Don't make decisions by yourself. Include the membership.
Right.
Let them know what's going on.
And and sometimes the membership will put you in check, right? About transparency and making decisions and wanting to be involved, and there's nothing wrong with that. Like that can be a thing, and it's fine. You should be able to justify anything that you're doing, right? There should be enough reason that you can say, this is why, this is how this happened, this is what I decided to do, and it may or may not be the ideal perfect scenario, but at least you've got justification for it, right? It wasn't just, well, I like that and that's what I wanted and it helped me, right? That it helped me is never the answer.
Right.
So I I thoroughly enjoy the traveling and the going and doing those. I I venture off into the marketing discussion because that's what that class was about. And there was some really good posts about people with there was a guy that had this, well, we're understaffed and we've got to recruit, and how do we recruit? And boy, somebody jumps on there and is like, does your town have a newsletter? Do you run ads in the paper? And it's like, no, that's not the answer, right? We could recruit to the point of 1,000-member department if that's what our goal was. It's not our goal, and we're not going to do that because that's literally ludicrous. But we could do that. It's possible. It's really not hard. It's absolutely the wrong thing to do. That's why we're not going to do that. But we could do that if that was what we wanted. I I don't understand. And then I also see a lot of the people saying retention is the key. And while I don't disagree with retention is the key and it is very important, I don't think we're at a time in society where the expectation of the 50-year member is realistic.
No, not even close. The fact of the matter is departments' retention problems real easy to address.
Yeah, no, that's an operational,
Yeah. The
organizational,
fact of the matter is that
leadership.
you've got someone that's being an ass to your new members and running them all off, or your organization is so sealed tight and so unequivocally non beneficial to someone's goal of joining the organization to go fight fires, to go help the community, to go do their version of public service that you're running people off left and right. There's not a single program on the face of the earth that'll address that. The only way to address that is internally. You have to have a chief realize that this person's the problem and you have to address it.
So we get a lot of, well, we get a lot of kind of, I don't know, pushback's the wrong word, but uh contrarian ideas about how we're able to maintain a large membership and how we do things, and I always go back to the building value in the individual, right? We build value into the individual. And kind of our cheat and woodchuck thing in all this is we do have a relatively high call volume, which makes it easier than it would be for a department with 200 calls a year.
Right.
I 100% acknowledge that. But I think that the way we offset that to where if we were half the call volume, let's say we were a 900 call a year department versus where we are,
Oh
right?
no.
Right? We could offset that with the other opportunities that we're affording to our members,
Right.
right? The training opportunities, the involvement, the community outreach stuff that we do, the pub ed stuff. Like there's other opportunities that can be uh really augment that call volume to keep people involved. I think the big thing, and I hear it all the time, and I'd be lying if I said we didn't struggle with it, right? That X number does 90% of the work, right? I don't think you get rid of that. I don't think that's a thing. I think the only thing you can control is the total number, and then hope that the X number increases off of the total number. Right?
So I'm going to counter this. Okay, not counter, but enhance, just circle, highlight, underline, bold, italicize, throw an exclamation point on this statement. That is literally the purpose of the organization, is for you to give what you want to give.
Right.
Okay? That is entirely unequivocally your decision. No one's holding a gun to your head. And I can tell you this, no one person's that important to an organization that if they leave and the organization collapses, you never had an organization.
Right.
Okay?
And I kind of speak to that firsthand, right? I know what you can't be the glue that holds the whole thing together.
No.
That's actually very bad. And I understand what it kind of means, even though I wasn't the glue, right? I was maybe the tape that was holding it for the glue to try to hold it together, or the C clamp waiting for the glue to dry. But did the organization hurt when I left? Probably. Is it still going today? Absolutely. Right? It's not. I wasn't indispensable. Not even close.
Yeah.
Not even close. Did it make a difference? Absolutely. Did the people that follow behind you sometimes have different ideas? 100% of the time. And they'll try, and they'll either succeed or fail in their ideas, and that's the whole lifeblood of the organization. It's
Right.
not it's not your purpose to influence that after you leave.
I can tell you that if you think you're so vital to your fire department that it collapses without you being there, I would argue that you're staying involved with the organization for the wrong reasons. You're going to be fostering a ton of resentment against the other members. And at the end of the day, the flip side of that coin is that humans are creature of comfort and habit. And the fact of the matter is that if someone else is taking care of it, then good, I can go do something else.
Yeah, I think, and I'm going to ask you this question. Do you think that taking that step back sometimes and just letting let's say the ship sell itself, right? So you're going to let things happen to see what happens, and let it take its own form, because that's what it needs to do sometimes. Do you
Right.
do you think that sometimes that's misconstrued as you're you're not needed, or you're not
Your hands off.
too
Yeah.
hands off?
Yeah. I would argue that.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm gonna make a joke. 50% of the firefighters I know complain about things changing, and I know the other 50% complain about nothing changes.
Right.
There's no win. There's if you're in the position of making decisions based off of convenience, comfort, making life easy. Let me rephrase that. All decisions based off of that being a popularity contest. you're in for a world of hurt.
Yeah.
Short run, long run.
I think that sometimes taking the hands off the wheel and letting it see where it's pointed, right? In your case, take your hands off the yoke and see where the trim's at, right? Because you kind of got to do that every now and then to make sure you're not fighting against the actual organization itself. You've got to see where it wants to steer itself to know where you need to influence and what needs to, that 10,000-foot view. And I think that gets misinterpreted a lot of times, especially in the lower ranks of guys just not caring or something. And it's not that. It's literally just understanding what it needs and where it needs to go next.
Right.
And I think we've been in kind of that pattern for the last, I don't know, few months of just seeing where it goes and what it does and kind of grow from there.
Well, one of the bigger sins that I'm ever guilty of as chief is that I have a tendency to be hands off to my detriment and to the organization's detriment. And it's bitten me in the ass solidly and thoroughly a couple of times. But at the end of the day, I truly believe that the membership is the one that actually runs the organization. Okay. They're the ones that set the sails, they're the ones doing the deck work, they're the ones preparing the rigging. And all I'm doing is taking what their interpretation of the direction they want to go, and all I do is simply grab the rudder and tweak it left or right
Yeah.
and then hold. Okay. And maybe I'm being naive when I say this, but from the classic authoritarian hammer and sickle, fire and brimstone chief, I am not.
Yeah.
But
And I also think sometimes that is what's necessary, right?
yes, I won't dispute that. That said, I don't
It's
think
reading the
I don't think we've had any times
no, I don't think so.
currently where we've needed, for a lack of better words, a really, really strong command presence.
Yeah.
Um,
I th-
and I'm going to even go as far as to say that when I took over as chief, we really needed that. But my style, my preference, my personality, my demeanor isn't that. It just isn't.
yeah.
Uh, but I don't have a problem.
But the assistant chief at the time had that kind of
Right.
going for him, and he kind of shipped that way. And I man, I think it takes everybody. It takes a lot of different personalities. I don't think any of our tenures at any of these positions or perpetual. I don't think we should look at them as perpetual. I don't think any of them are necessarily what's right today is right tomorrow. I think sometimes you've got to shift to kind of keep things going in a forward direction. I think the forward direction of progress and growth and building value into the members in the organization are the key factors that means you're doing the right thing.
Yeah.
And I think when you lose any of those kind of things, that you've got to step back and really look at what you're doing and determine if it's right or wrong. And sometimes the membership will just tell you, right? You're an idiot. Goodbye.
Sure. No, in my weird tenure ship in Granbury,
That is bright.
that was really bright. I'm gonna let old boy know that we're in a podcast, so give me just a second. Uh in my 15, 16 years on Granbury, I am the third chief.
Yeah.
The two previous chiefs that I know, it's always been a Batman movie quote. You've either die soon enough to be the hero or you live long enough to be the villain. And I think that has a tendency of a lot of departments where you don't get a rotation in chiefs, but it's not a rotation in chiefs. What it is are you maintaining status quo or are you continually challenging the organization?
Yeah. Yeah. Challenging the ideas, the capacity, the whole host of things that you kind of got to keep working on. And we had a talk earlier about the longevity of volunteering and how that works. I think as long as we're continually challenging not only the membership but the capabilities, but the organization itself into being better, I think that we stay volunteer for many eons to come.
Yeah.
I,
I
I
think I think our next business meeting I might hijack it a little bit. Um I had a fantastic discussion last Thursday night, just kind of talking about the future of the department. And there was a great discussion there. And I think we kind of need to have that department wide.
yeah,
And the fact of the matter is that I see no reason. I almost find it, and I'm going to be really self centered when I say this, and maybe I have my blinders on, and maybe my head's in the sand, and maybe I'm being really
cranial rectomitis.
stupid and ignorant, and maybe I'm an idiot. But I think we'd be insane to change the direction of the department right now.
Yeah, no,
Like, and I'm talking about a fundamental change to the organization to sit there and say that this isn't the path forward. And I would need, at the end of the day, I'm a pretty analytical and empirical data person. So you can't tell me about the future without sitting there and directly addressing the past and what the data says. So I think it's a fantastic discussion to have. And I think it's good for the organization to have that discussion. And I don't see any reason to not also consider what the membership currently thinks
right.
and make sure they're there.
I I think it's all constantly evaluating, constantly working, constantly looking at where you are and where you want to be. It's as long as you're not idle or complacent or regressing,
I
I
I
think
th-
you're good.
I think the complacency is regressing personally. And I'm not talking about, oh my God, we had a gigantic project and I want to go into cruise control for a quarter.
Right.
That's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking you've been chief for 35 years and the last even remote positive great thing you did was 27 years ago. And you've been cruising the whole time
on that.
on that. Like, we probably need to actually reevaluate and have whatever, a heart to heart, a come to Jesus, a turn on the light switch moment. But to sit there and try and devalue the things that you've achieved very recently to try and make an assumption in the future just doesn't make a lot of sense to me. Really doesn't.
So good talk. I think we can say that a little bit different than what we've been kind of harping on the last
Sure.
uh little bit. I want to get people. So if you're not familiar with the Heroes Next Door or watch Heroes Next Door on YouTube, uh Mike Murillo, fantastic YouTube channel. He's out of Pennsylvania. Uh Career paramedic, volunteer fireman, like solid dude. He's got a YouTube channel where he does station tours and just different things for the fire service, EMS service, law enforcement, uh very centric to the first responders. We're going to have him in Texas next month. And he's going to be here in Granbury for several days doing some stuff. We're going to take him up to Frisco with us to the SFFMA convention. He's going to be on our podcast on the 21st. I believe that's at around 3 o'clock. We'll live stream that. So if you're interested, jump on that. Go ahead and go to our YouTube and subscribe and hit the bell notification so you know when that actually kicks off. And you can watch it live. But coming to Texas from Pennsylvania for a week to do a bunch of videos and stuff costs money, right, Matt?
Yeah.
Costs real money. So,
Unless
it's
you have a CIA printing machine in your basement.
right. So, what my ask is, and we normally ask, to for us to follow and subscribe and click and do all that. I want you to go to Watch Heroes Next Door on YouTube and consider subscribing. He has a paying deal on there. If you go to any of the videos, you can join his channel page, uh, and show him some support to come to Texas. Right? He's got a full schedule. He's not looking for anybody else to go visit. He's good. Uh, Kind of the world of social media and all this has brought us together to do this project. Uh, it's going to be really awesome. It's good for everybody involved, and show him some love. Go find his channel and show him some love, and hopefully that helps him kind of offset some of the cost of this. Right?
That'd be the plan.
Yeah,
Hopefully.
yeah. And if you can't find him and you want to support, hit our Patreon. Do a deal. I promise everything for the next month. Well, it'll be the next 2 months really. We'll throw it over to Mike to help offset his trip down here, and so any new patrons, and realize we don't give you much extra for that. We're barely scraping by with what we do now. But if you want to jump on our Patreon and throw some support there, we'll pass that along to Mike. So, you got anything else, Matt?
I don't. I think we could yammer on for a while, but there's multiple ways to support all the paid and, let me rephrase that, career and volunteer firefighters out there. Um, and Mike does some really good work for highlighting organizations, career and volunteer.
Yeah.
And if you can give him a nod, do it.
Yeah. Worthy dude. Like his heart is in the right place in this. He's not doing that channel to highlight Mike. It's about highlighting positive, good organizations.
Right. Yep. That'd
So,
be the idea.
well,
You got anything else?
I don't, other
Okay.
than how do they get a hold of us?
You can find us at ittasteslikeburningcast@gmail.com. You can find us on YouTube at ittasteslikeburningcast. You can give us a support on Patreon at ittasteslikeburningcast. And if you ever feeling frosty, frisky, or excited, don't be afraid to reach out to us if you have our cell phones. And with that said, this Matt,
This Jesse.
have a good evening.